tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Every friend that I have in Israel was in a bomb shelter.
I believe that this is an attack both on the people of Israel as well as people of Iran.
Israelis and Iranians in BC fear for their loved ones after Iran fires ballistic missiles at Israel, and Israel vows to respond. Plus,
I want our expectations to go up.
cut homelessness, hike social assistance, and provide free public transit. The BC Greens unveil some big platform promises, but how will they pay for it?
This is what a more visionary policy platform could look like when you know you're not going to win the election.
And
Black people came here to go to the beach. Japanese people, South Asian, Indigenous people.
It's another sort of whisper of something that was there, and then the frustration of the fact that it wasn't very well documented.
we take you to an historic Vancouver seaside with an eyebrow-raising nickname you may not know.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Israel's prime minister says Iran made a, quote, big mistake when it launched dozens of missiles into his country, further increasing the risk of an all-out regional war.
Okay, guys, we got to get off the roof. These are coming down right next to us here. They're coming down. One just about. We got to go inside.
Ground-shaking explosions were felt in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Israel says its air defenses intercepted most of the missiles, though some did get through. It reports some injuries on the ground, but it has not been specific. Iran says the vast majority of the missiles did hit their targets. In a statement, Tehran cited the killings of 3 top militant leaders as a reason for the attack. The strikes come a day after Israeli defense forces announced ground operations in southern Lebanon had begun. Israel says there will be a response. John Hernandez has more on the fear Israelis and Iranians in BC feel for their loved ones.
Every friend that I have in Israel was in a bomb shelter.
Vancouver Rabbi Dan Moskowitz has been wrestling with fear and worry, watching from afar as Iran launched missiles into Israel.
It made me feel guilty for being in the safety and security of here in Canada. It made me feel grateful for the IDF and the missile defense system that is keeping them safe.
Moskowitz, among local faith leaders, condemning the strike, which comes at the start of the Jewish High Holy Days and 1 year after the Hamas-led attacks on Israel.
Of course, we are thinking about it being almost a year exactly to October 7th and the most horrendous and deadly attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust.
Iran's missile launch is in retaliation for Israel's campaign against Tehran's Hezbollah allies in Lebanon. While there have been no reported deaths from the missile strike, there are mounting concerns it could lead to further violence.
Many people that they are in Isfahan have been moved to different cities across Iran because they know that attack will imminent.
Vancouver Iranian refugees Behzad Muradabi and Yassi Bayani fear for their families back home as Israel has vowed to retaliate.
I believe that this is an attack both on the people of Israel as well as people of Iran, because we know that the war will start, and this is horrifying for me.
Retaliation that onlookers warn would only destabilize the region further.
They could retaliate really big times, and if they do, Iran will retaliate on much bigger scales.
Canadian officials say they unequivocally condemn the missile strike and are calling on both sides to avoid an all-out war.
We need to make sure that there's no escalation. Of course, Israel needs to be able to protect itself, and that's why we'll continue to support its security.
Calls for de-escalation echoed by members of Israeli and Iranian communities here in hopes of stopping any further violence. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
The BC Greens are the first party to unveil their full election platform this campaign, and it comes with some big promises. A pledge to hike social assistance rates and cut homelessness. But as Katie DeRosa reports, the party notes it is not running a candidate in every riding.
And I'm so tired of our expectations being diminished with every election that goes by. I want our expectations to go up. We are releasing a platform that says to British Columbia, raise your expectations, expect better.
BC Green Party leader Sonia Furstenau is making some big promises. The party's platform includes a pledge to more than double social assistance and disability rates at a cost of $2 billion a year. The Greens also plan to provide housing to everyone living on the streets, make public transit free, and lower the voting age to 16. The Greens would also integrate mental health workers as a fourth option in 911 calls, beyond police, firefighters, or paramedics. The party would create a well-being framework as a way to measure whether government programs are making people's lives better. So how will the party pay for all of this? The BC Greens say they would pay for this plan by taxing the richest British Columbians, which would bring in another $5.5 billion a year. People earning $350,000 a year or more would be taxed at 22%, up from 20%. Companies with $1 billion in revenue would be taxed at 18%, and people who have properties worth $3 million or more would also face a tax increase. At least one economist is skeptical the Greens' financing plan will work.
This is what a more visionary policy platform could look like when you know you're not going to win the election.
Unlike the NDP and the BC Conservatives, the Greens are not running a full slate of candidates. Furstenau admits she's disappointed the party could only get 69 candidates, but says she's proud of those who are running. The NDP incumbent Furstenau is running against says the NDP government is already acting on some of the Greens' promises.
A well-being action plan for children and youth is something I committed to over the summer, and a BC Conservative government puts all of that at risk for children, for youth, for families.
But so instead of focusing on the Greens, you keep kind of mentioning BC Conservative. So is the message that a vote for the Greens is taking a vote away from the NDP and could prop up the Conservatives?
I think we need to recognize that the stakes at this election are high.
The Conservative candidate in Victoria Beacon Hill, Tim Thielman, declined to comment on the Greens' platform. Furstenau has encouraged voters to return a minority government, similar to 2017 when the Greens ended up with the balance of power.
Until we all start voting for what we want, we're going to keep getting the same outcomes. We're going to keep getting what we don't want. We're going to keep having to settle for less.
The Greens face a big fight in this election, with Furstenau running in an NDP stronghold and Green incumbent Adam Olsen not running again. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
NDP leader David Eby says his party is offering better job protection for those who get sick. He says people shouldn't have to worry about their jobs when they're stressed about something like a cancer diagnosis.
We're announcing that we'll be expanding protected job leave. Your job will be protected for you. Currently, it's 8 days, which doesn't make any sense for that kind of major diagnosis. We're expanding it from 8 days to 27 weeks.
Eby says his government would also offer more health-related travel assistance for people in rural areas. He says his government would cover the cost of mileage to get treatment or see a specialist, and the patient would get the money up front. The BC Conservatives, meanwhile, say the government needs to be more realistic about our power requirements. Leader John Rustad argues basic energy needs are not being met now, and it's time to look at nuclear power.
What does it mean? How do we do it? What do we do? How do we deal with this associated with, the seismic issues that we have in this province? Can this be done affordably? Can it be done reliably? Can it be done safely?
Rustad says if elected, he would scrap government mandates on electric cars and heat pumps. The climate and energy think tank Clean Energy Canada says small modular nuclear reactors may not be cost competitive for BC's grid in the future. North Shore mayors are pleading for more funding for public transit from the province. Without it, they say services will be cut drastically.
Imagine a future where the North Shore loses most of its bus routes. All of the bus service is shut down at 8 o'clock at night. And SkyTrain and Seabus services are suddenly reduced by 30%.
TransLink warns it's facing a pending structural deficit of $600 million a year. City of North Vancouver Mayor Linda Buchanan says no new funding has been committed by the province after next year. The mayors are calling on parties to publish their plans for transit funding. Just before the mayors made their pitch, NDP candidates on the North Shore did pledge a rapid bus service from Park Royal to Metrotown, separated from other traffic. And ahead of next Tuesday's TV debate, a draw has now decided the order of the closing statements and which podiums the party leaders will stand at.
We will draw for the audience left podium. And I'm not looking. And that will go to the Conservatives.
The NDP leader will stand in the center and the Green Party leader will appear on the right of your screen. The BC Greens will make the first closing statement, then the New Democrats, and finally the Conservatives. CBC News will host the leaders' debate next Tuesday, October 8th, starting at 6:30 p.m. So we've heard from the major parties, but what about you? We recently asked voters in the riding of Burnaby South Metro Town what their concerns are.
Cost of living is too high in terms of the quality of standard of care, how much wages are in comparison to how much things cost. Things like that need to be addressed.
Finding a job in general, honestly, is really hard right now. I've been trying to for a while and, not much luck, honestly.
It's a drugs. Because more young people dying, overdose or whatever it is, more people live on the street.
Housing very important for the homeless. How can people live in the street? How? I don't understand that.
I'm deeply concerned about the direction that the environment is going. The deadliest natural disaster in Canada's history, deadliest climate-related disaster in Canada's history happened here in BC only a couple years ago, and I feel like everybody forgot the heat dome 2021.
In the coming months, a mammoth hydroelectric dam in Fort St. John will start delivering much-needed electricity to customers. Site C is likely to be the last big dam in BC. We've long relied on water from those dams for affordable, renewable electricity. But as Lindsay Duncombe reports, that reality is changing.
It's huge.
Yeah, these are 10 meters in diameter.
Yeah.
The demand for electricity in British Columbia is growing so fast, even water flowing through these giant structures won't be enough. Construction manager Chris Waite spent 8.5 years working on this project.
This is a generational type project. It's a very, very large one.
This is Site C, likely the last major hydroelectric dam in British Columbia. It took a decade to build and cost $16 billion. Building dams creates flooding, destroying farmland and traditional territory. This project went forward after decades of opposition and an undisclosed settlement to the First Nation here. Big costs for much-needed power.
The whole push for electrification, which really means that we need more power on the system. And so Site C is coming on at absolutely the perfect time for that.
When Site C is fully online, it will increase BC's power generation by 8%. That's enough to power close to 500,000 homes, but it's not enough to keep up with increasing demand.
BC Hydro expects demand for electricity to grow 15% or more in the next 6 years due to a growing population, industrial expansion, electric vehicles, and even artificial intelligence.
AI is a huge energy hog, so we're expecting an incredible increase in demand, and Site C won't be anywhere near sufficient to cover that increase.
Andy Hira runs the Clean Energy Research Group at Simon Fraser University. He says another problem, climate change, can mean less water. Less water means less energy. Last year's drought meant BC had to import 20% of its power from neighboring provinces and states.
We don't really have good, reliable models about what the precipitation patterns are going to look like in 10 or 15 years.
Margareta Dovgall studies climate change and energy. She says it's possible BC and its neighbors could be hit by drought conditions at the same time.
At the very least, we are going to see price increases if the new capacity coming online can't meet the demand. Possible as well that we see things like brownouts.
BC Hydro says it plans for fluctuations and will announce new renewable projects later this year, according to CEO Chris O'Reilly.
We are confident that we have the resources here in British Columbia to meet the near-term requirements while planning and investing for growth down the road.
And this is the thing that spins around.
This spins at 72 RPM.
Site C is part of that plan.
This is our last one, unit number 6. And
Once these final giant rotors are in place, it will begin to deliver power in December. It's expected to operate for more than 100 years through whatever changes the next century brings. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Fort St. John.
In the Okanagan, the RCMP are investigating following a violent attack on a teen girl. As Brady Strachan reports, it happened Friday in a Kelowna park, and video of the incident has been circulating in that community.
The alleged attack happened at this lakeside park, Gyro Beach, on Friday evening in Kelowna.
No, just stand, keep the circle.
Now, video shared with CBC News by the victim's family shows a large group of people surrounding a girl. Everyone looks to be youth in the video. At one point, another female youth grabs the girl by the hair and takes her to the ground, then repeatedly punches her while she's lying on the ground. Another male youth appears to grab dirt and sand and throw it on the victim, who is lying motionless. Now, CBC News has spoken to the victim's father. He says his daughter is 13 years old. She suffered a concussion and multiple abrasions and bruises to her face and ribs.
My daughter tried calling for help and texting because I think she kind of sensed that there was something going on. And then as they swarmed her, they took her phone so she couldn't call for help anymore. And then that's when the beating started, and then they threw her phone back at her when she was laying there motionless after they were done dumping dirt on her head.
The RCMP say they're reviewing the video to try and identify people involved. And they say this was just one of several incidents on Friday night involving youth, some of them criminal and some of them assaults, that they're investigating. Now, police say the video has been shared on social media, and they're asking people to be sensitive about doxing or identifying youth who may be part of the investigation or victims. The incident also comes about 1 year after another altercation involving youth at a different park in Kelowna. A 15-year-old teen died following that incident when he was allegedly hit by a car. Now, police are asking anyone who witnessed this incident on Friday to contact them. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna.
A 35-year-old man has now been found guilty of 2 counts of second-degree murder. Wade Cudmore from Naramata was one of 2 people accused of killing 2 brothers during a drug deal. The bodies of Eric and Carlos Fryer were found shot and stabbed close to where Cudmore lived. He testified he was there to buy $400,000 worth of carfentanil, cocaine, and crystal meth from the brothers. And he told the BC Supreme Court his partner, Anthony Graham, was solely responsible for those murders. Graham is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. He remains at large. A warning, some of the details in this next story may be upsetting. Surrey musician Jacob Hogard has testified at his sexual assault trial. As Nicole Williams explains, Hogard denies raping his accuser and is painting a dramatically different picture of their encounter 8 years ago.
During emotional testimony, the woman accusing Headley frontman Jacob Hogard of sexual assault described the night in question. She says Hogard raped her in his hotel room after this concert and a bonfire after party in northeastern Ontario back in 2016. She says he slapped her, choked her until she was unconscious, later urinating on her when she went to take a shower, and that the musician also degraded her, calling her a dirty little pig. Today, Hogard firmly denied all those allegations, describing his sexual encounter with the then 19-year-old woman as consensual. He confirmed they first met at the bonfire. I was being flirtatious with her. She was being flirtatious back, he testified. At one point, we kissed, and she seemed to be having a great time. Hogard says he then invited the woman back to his hotel room, hoping we would have sex. He says he played his guitar before they began kissing on the bed and having intercourse. The musician also denying allegations he forced her to pose naked with his guitar or filmed her, saying instead that he asked her repeatedly if she was okay to make sure she was enjoying herself. I remember it being really nice, he says, of the evening spent with the woman. I felt really comfortable with her. The jury in this case will have to consider both versions of the story, weighing the credibility of the complainant against the credibility of the accused.
It is not a contest between who is telling the truth, right? It's not black and white. If the jury believes the accused, that's the end of the story. And he must be acquitted. The jury has to find him not guilty.
During cross-examination, the Crown tried to assert Hogarth's memory of that night as unreliable. He pointed to gaps in the musician's retelling of that night, including how he came to know the woman's age. The complainant claims that happened while Hogarth was filming her naked in the hotel room.
The Crown also suggests the Hedley frontman kept asking the woman if she was okay during their encounter because it was clear she was not. Hogarth denied that too. The trial continues Wednesday. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Toronto.
Back in this province, North Shore rescue crews saved a man from the very steep East Lion Summit slope on Monday afternoon. Take a look at this. He was believed to be solo scrambling on the mountain when he fell down and got stuck on a ledge. You can see it there. The team says the man was unconscious for about half an hour before he called 911. A helicopter rescue crew, including a mountain tech and an ER doctor, anchored the man to the slope, then treated him using a specialized stretcher made for technical rescues like this. They say the man suffered serious injuries to his back, ribs, and head.
One of the most technical aerial rescues we've done. Fortunately, the weather conditions were good. We had very skilled members, the ER doctor, mountain rescue technicians. And we had an excellent pilot in Talon. So all the things we needed to make this rescue safe were in place.
North Shore Rescue says climbers ought to have a plan, appropriate gear, and go with a partner if they can when going on a summit like this. Ongoing job action continues to affect several inland ferry routes in BC. Sporadic outages are impacting 4 ferry routes in the interior, including the Adams Lake, Upper Arrow, Arrow Park, and the Needles ferries. Those ferries will run for essential police and ambulance crossings, as well as for people heading to school or going to a medical appointment. Travelers, though, are urged to plan ahead. Seniors in Nanaimo gathered to demand more action by the provincial government to address the climate emergency. As Claire Palmer shows us, the rocking chair rally outside an NDP candidate's office was one of many events held across the province.
We need the government to get on board and smarten up. Yeah.
These seniors say they're taking a stand for climate action.
Eventually, the politicians will get the message that if we don't mitigate climate change, not only are human beings hooped on this planet, life on this planet is in jeopardy.
Seniors for climate action! Tuesday marked National Seniors Day, and more than 70 events took place nationwide to demand politicians act now on climate. Dozens gathered here in front of NDP candidate Sheila Malcolmson's office. Organizers say they want their kids and grandkids to inherit a better world.
I'll tell you, grandchildren, they just pump my heart. Boom, 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 boom. There's so much love from them, and they sit on my lap and I read stories. You know, those kids deserve the best.
Junkin says there are good and affordable solutions, but politicians must act.
And many other countries have many renewables, and there's many businesses ready and willing to improve our wind, our solar, our hydro situation here. I really think it can be done. There is hope. We can do it. We just need leadership from the government.
Candidates from the Green Party and NDP attended the rally, listening as the provincial election looms.
Jasper, half burned to the ground, Lytton, Abbotsford. How many of these disasters do we need to have happen before we wake up and act?
You know, when I'm at a rally like this or at the candidates meeting last night where climate change is the #1 issue, and when I knock on doors and people say climate change is #1 issue, my heart just gives a little extra beat.
Junkin says that since seniors make up such a large demographic in Canada, it's time to use that social and political power for good. Claire Palmer, CBC News, Nanaimo.
Darius Madavi joins us now with a look at the weather. Since it's October 1st, might as well bring in some snow and some rain.
Yes, that is the story.
Mm-hmm.
No matter where you are, it looks like we're going to get some moisture, and
We're just going to check and see whether he has his microphone on. The wonder and power of live television, everyone. Not that we've ever made a mistake.
No. Not me, Dan.
No,
Making a
of
mistake?
course not.
Never. No. Thank you. Rain and snow across parts of BC. That's right. Get your snow tires on because we're heading into that time, especially if you're in the interior. There's a special weather statement in place for Rogers Pass to Eagles Pass. There's also a note from the forecaster up in Fort Nelson that because there is some light snow happening there as well. Slippery roads and temperatures near zero are looking risky there. If you're in the Prince George area or in the Caribou, we had that moisture move off, continuing to move further to the east, but still affecting the highways there. Some snow also for those higher elevations. The freezing levels have come down quite a bit. So if you're in northern BC, then even at ground level. But if you're in places further south, still plenty of moisture coming in and falling as snow for those higher peaks. So expect to see a decent amount of rainfall continue over the next few days, at times coming in and out. Now, the southern interior will get a bit of a break, get a little bit of sunshine in the days ahead, but it's not going to be lasting all too long. There will be some showers breaking in as we see some more moisture hit the coast. Here on the south coast, we're mostly dry. That's going to be the story throughout the day tomorrow as well, but some more moisture moves in late on Thursday for the North Island and then makes its way down to the lower mainland by Friday. If we take a look here again, drying out, that cloud is present tomorrow morning and then clearing out for the afternoon. And then on Thursday, it's the opposite. Cloud moving in for the afternoon, but clear for the morning. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll check in later. Thanks.
Thank you.
Vancouver's beaches are pretty iconic. From Jericho to Spanish Banks to Kitts, it is quite the list. But have you ever heard of Brown Skin Beach? The story of racism and swimming in this city is next. As we move from summer into fall, beach season is rapidly winding down for most people in Metro Vancouver. But there's one beach with an eyebrow-raising nickname you may have not heard of before. Our Ashley Moliere spent time looking into its existence and why some people believe we ought to know more about it.
As the waves of the Pacific Ocean crash along the shore, this Vancouver beach holds history, washed away over time. Decades ago, it was known among some locals as Brownskin Beach.
Black people came here to go to the beach. Japanese people, South Asian, Indigenous people.
It's another sort of whisper of something that was there, and then the frustration of the fact that it wasn't very well documented.
I think it's important to think about how settler colonialism and white supremacy have really shaped urban planning and how urban planning shapes recreational development in the city.
Brownskin Beach was the nickname for the Kitsilano Indian Reserve Beach. It existed right here where Vanier Park is now. It was a popular swimming spot for people of color in the early 1900s. And the name isn't well documented, but that doesn't mean the beach has been forgotten. I wanted to find out as much as I could about the beach. So I spoke with those who have connections to it and have written and researched it to show why it's important to preserve its history before it's too late. Let's start with a little bit of background on the land. It belonged to the Squamish people and was known as Sanok. They were forcibly removed from the land in 1913 so the city of Vancouver could expand its infrastructure. We don't know exactly when part of the land started to be used as a beach, but some of the first photos documenting it being used for recreational purposes were taken in the early 1930s. So Heather, what are we looking at here?
You're looking at a number of photos that were taken by Major Matthews, the first city archivist. And he had gone down on August 7th, 1932, not far from where we are now, to where there had been a beach, heavily used by a lot of people in the 1920s and 30s.
It became a destination site for Black and Asian Vancouverites to swim at a time when the pools were segregated and English Bay was not officially segregated. Those other beaches were not officially segregated, but as I understood, what people said is that they were unwelcome there, though, if they were not white.
The segregation Compton is referring to was part of the rules at Crystal Pool. It was an indoor swimming pool located across the water at Sunset Beach from 1929 to 1974.
During the period from 1941 to 1945, there was a segregation policy. And what that policy was that on Tuesday mornings from 10 o'clock till noon was when Chinese, Japanese, and Negroes could swim there.
After getting more of a sense of the beach and who went there, I was hoping to track down someone who had family who went to it around this time period.
My name is Vivian Rignestad, third-generation Japanese-Canadian. My parents were born in Canada. My mother lived near the beach. My father came from the Powell Street area and swam there a lot. My father used to go there and swim. He was quite the athlete. He would go with his friends and swim there. And my understanding is that they would swim from the beach to the other side, which is now Sunset Beach, and they would swim back and forth.
Rignestad says she wasn't familiar with the nickname Brownskin Beach until we spoke. She says hearing it came as a shock.
What it does is it affirms the racism that was there, not just to Japanese Canadians, but to anybody who wasn't white.
So we have photos of people of color using the beach, and we have a secondhand account of someone's family who used to go to it. But neither source mentions the use of the nickname Brownskin Beach. Joy Russell has been researching Brownskin Beach as part of her thesis for 4 years. How hard has it been for you to verify its existence?
It's been very difficult trying to verify the existence of Brownskin Beach in the kind of official archives.
But there is one primary source that both Compton and Russell are familiar with. It's a video recorded of Vancouver resident Joyce Barry back in 2011 as part of the city's 125th anniversary celebration. Barry grew up on Pryor Street in the 1940s, and in this video, she specifically uses the term Brownskin Beach.
Every year, once a year, we would have a picnic And my aunts and my grandma and everybody would cook for a whole week getting ready for this big, big picnic. And we would take the streetcar, and then we would get off, and right there now I think is the planetarium or something. And I don't know if what the name of the beach was either, but we used to call it Brown Skin Beach because we all had brown skin. And my uncles used to swim across that water to where I think Crystal Pool was. And I used to find that so scary because I love water, but I was always really nervous of deep water.
This account shows at least some beachgoers were using the nickname. So why is it not in the city's archives?
The short answer to that is no one who has given records to us wrote that down. Sometimes folks just don't document their lives because documenting your life can be a luxury, right? Yeah. A good example, early film. Film was really, really expensive, so we have many family films here of very rich members of Vancouver society because they could afford the film.
Even though there isn't a lot of evidence to definitively prove that this nickname existed, some believe it's an important place to recognize because it's part of Vancouver's history.
The fact of how quickly things slip into obscurity, it's a lesson for now. Going to the beach was just kind of everyday thing. I don't think the people who did it imagined that we would be having this interview decades later.
It's the stories that always have the emotion. It's the stories that are memorable.
It's important that our stories get into the official record, but that's not the only archive that exists. They've always been, for centuries and centuries, through oral histories, through storytelling, through dance, through ritual, through ceremonies, through land protocols, and they continue to be documented. So I think it's important that we kind of reframe our idea of what documentation actually looks like.
So yes, the name Brown Skin Beach is hard to verify. But hearing the stories, seeing the photographs of those who once visited these shores, and ongoing research shows us how its history lives on even as the landscape changes. Ashley Mollier, CBC News, Vancouver.
Still to come, we'll bring you more reporting from Jerusalem and Beirut as Israel vows to respond after Iran fired ballistic missiles at that country in retaliation for Israel's campaign against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Returning to our top story tonight, Iran has launched a direct attack on Israel, firing dozens of ballistic missiles. As the CBC's Chris Brown explains, the attack further increases the risk of an all-out regional war.
This was a day that started with news of a huge escalation as Israel ordered its troops across the border with Lebanon to engage Hezbollah forces directly. But then it got much, much worse as Iran fired a large volley of rockets at Israel. In the skies over Israel's major cities, swarms of Iranian missiles honed in on targets as Israel's missile defenses launched to intercept. Our camera captured the dramatic scene above our hotel in Jerusalem. On the ground, sirens wailed in warning as people ran for shelters. Israelis were on alert from late afternoon when Israel Defense Forces spokesman Daniel Hagari provided the first official word that the U.S. believed an attack was coming, before later warning the missile attack could be wide-scale. But then, just moments before the air alert sounded, the Tel Aviv area was hit by another unexpected attack. 2 gunmen shot at passengers on a light rail train and people waiting on a platform, killing 6 and wounding 10. Eyewitnesses say a passerby with a gun killed at least one of the attackers. But there was little time to process that before the Iranian missiles began. In a statement, Iran's Revolutionary Guard warned if Israel retaliated, they would deliver a more crushing and destructive response. Last week, Israel assassinated Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Iran's biggest militia, Hezbollah, and many of his top commanders by annihilating his Beirut command bunker with a direct hit. Israel had already been conducting intensive bombing of Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, leaving more than 1,000 people dead. But early this morning, escalated further by sending its troops into direct combat with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. The IDF says they were localized ground raids, but opponents called the operation an invasion. It appears that far more people were killed or hurt in the light rail attacks than by Iran's missile barrage, which has no confirmed deaths, but the attack seems certain to expand this war even more. Chris Brown, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Israel is continuing its push into Lebanon tonight, one day after beginning a ground operation. The CBC's Margaret Evans is in Beirut with more.
Hezbollah supporters here in Lebanon have been waiting for Iran to take action against Israel to avenge the death of Hassan Nasrallah in an airstrike on Friday. And when it did, there was celebratory gunfire in the streets of some Beirut neighborhoods, even fireworks. Not everyone in Lebanon supports Hezbollah. Some blame the militant group for dragging Lebanon into a war they say it can ill afford. The conflict escalated another notch overnight when Israeli troops crossed the border into Lebanon to conduct what they described as a limited ground operation, targeting Hezbollah infrastructure near the border. Now, the Israeli military says it isn't the first time Israeli troops have crossed into Lebanon during this conflict.
We did dozens of operations, and those operations are the one that gave us the intelligence, how to act now and how to dismantle all those capabilities and infrastructures.
The Israeli military also warned residents from about 30 villages in southern Lebanon to leave immediately and move north. They join an estimated 1 million people already displaced inside Lebanon, according to the Lebanese government, straining resources and adding to the growing sense of fear and chaos inside the country. Some Lebanese say they hope Iran's intervention will draw Israel's attention away from Lebanon and give people some respite. That's unlikely. Israeli airstrikes continue here in Beirut and in other parts of the country, and Hezbollah insists it's ready to fight Israel on the ground, despite the loss of so many of its senior commanders. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Beirut.
Hurricane Helene continues to tear through parts of the U.S., becoming one of the deadliest storms to ever hit that country. An update after the break. Hurricane Helene now ranks as one of the deadliest storms in modern U.S. history. At least 135 people are dead across 6 states, and hundreds more remain unaccounted for. Days after the storm slammed ashore in the Big Bend area of Florida, millions of people all the way to North Carolina are still without water, power, and cell service. Western North Carolina has been especially hard hit, as you can see. Emergency crews from across the U.S. and Canada are working to find the missing and restore those services. Forecasters are also keeping an eye on Tropical Storm Kirk. It's well offshore, but is expected to become a powerful Atlantic hurricane later this week. Darius Madavi joins us now with our BC-wide weather forecast as we drift into fall.
Definitely drifting into fall. Some rain, some sun, some cloud this week, something for everybody. Dan, now you can see here, we've got that moisture streaming into the province still. We have a bit of dry air coming down, a little bit more moisture going to feed into the north and central coast there. This is the water vapor view on the satellite. And if we look at the atmospheric moisture, this is model data now, and we look, roll it forward a little bit, you can see that that stream of moisture that was bringing us some rain continuing to move further south. The next one that is going to feed in, not expected to arrive until Friday. So probably early in the day Thursday, we're going to get some of that moisture coming up to the north and central coast. I know it doesn't look like it from this, but north and central coast first. A storm system rolling off of this is what's going to bring that, and then coming down at the island and to the rest of the province. But mostly going to stick to the coast. Some showers will break into the interior at times, some snow on the mountains, but other than that, things are mostly confined to the coast. All the energy from these systems is really continuing to be directed to the north and central coast. That's where we're going to expect to see those impacts the most. But again, feeding down a bit of a dry day as we get into tomorrow and into Thursday, especially here on the lower mainland. North Island, central coast will probably see some more moisture tomorrow. The next big wave comes, and again, north coast, central coast, the big ones hit, but it does seem likely to bring some showers at least to us here on the south, here in the lower mainland, and to the South Island as well. In terms of temperatures, they're just sticking around fairly seasonal. This is pretty normal weather for the beginning of fall, but we are going to see those lows, especially tomorrow night, drop down into the negatives for the most northern parts of the province, including both the northwest and the northeast, but expect to see these temperatures stay pretty much where we'd expect them to be at the beginning of fall. Conditions across the province tomorrow, we see some more sunshine across the south, but expect to see some showers as well, especially in the morning. In some places like Tofino and Whistler, those may continue into the early afternoon, but then starting to dry out a little bit more. And again, some snow coming to parts of the northeast and the northwest tomorrow. And here in Vancouver, in terms of a 5-day forecast, Dan, we've got that cloud tomorrow, particularly in the morning, and it's starting to clear out into the afternoon at times. Thursday, cloud coming in the afternoon, here in the morning, and then some showery, windier conditions on Friday.
Okay, thanks very much, Darius.
Thank you.
Bringing more than just sports to kids who live with disabilities. Up next, we check in with a wheelchair basketball program in West Kelowna where it's all about joy, inclusion, and opportunity. You'll want to. In the Okanagan, kids of all abilities are getting a chance to play a new sport. The region's first youth wheelchair basketball program kicked off this week in West Kelowna.
As Brady Strachan reports, the program gives children with disabilities an opportunity to experience team sports and build friendships along the way.
With the swish of a hoop, these kids are rolling into a sport that's fun, inclusive, and full of energy. Organizers say this wheelchair basketball program is the first of its kind in the region. It's bringing kids with physical disabilities and those who are able-bodied together, much to the delight of parents like Ali Khan.
Just to see them light up and to automatically make friends with their peers out here, it's very heartwarming.
For his two sons, Everett and Emery, it's a chance to make new friends and learn valuable lessons on and off the court.
I just liked it because I got to play it with my friends on the bus and my brother. And I liked meeting new friends here too.
It looked like a lot of fun.
It was really fun.
For many families like Melissa Grasmick's, the new program is breaking barriers.
If you have a physical disability, until now, you had 0 team sports that you could join. 0 compared to, maybe 20 or 30 if you're able-bodied. So now to have this for kids is it's so special.
Her daughter Julia is one of the rising stars on the court, already setting big goals for the future.
My favorite sport is probably wheelchair basketball. And I'm gonna go to the Paralympics in 2028.
Win or lose, in the end, it's all about building camaraderie and confidence.
I really like teamwork when it's like a big scrimmage, like everybody working together. Yeah.
BC Let's Play and the BC Wheelchair Basketball Society provides the necessary equipment, like these specialized wheelchairs that allow for speed and quick turns.
So if you stop really quickly, your feet don't fly out like that, and they stay in the foot plate.
And after all the fast breaks, baskets, and scrimmages, it's the spirit of the sport that wins.
Good job, bud. I know it's good job.
Brady Strachan, CBC News, West Kelowna.
That is awesome.
I can't wait to see her in the Paralympics
No
in 2028.
kidding. Good to have goals.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
Michelle Gassoub will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the Nationals. So please join her then. Good night.